Slavic Aryan Vedas. Book 3. Yngliizm. Word of Wisdom of the Wise Man. Velimudra. Part 2. Vision. Ingliism is the third book in the series, Slavic Aryan Vedas, published for public use. This book is intended to tell modern people the true truth without any distortions or false interpretations about the ancient faith of the Slavic and Aryan peoples, Yngliizm. For our contemporaries in the Russian state and beyond, the very name of the ancient faith of the Slavic and Aryan peoples, Yngliizm, is forgotten and seems foreign, something alien. For in the modern world, there exists an undeniable, scientifically proven opinion about the so-called traditional Russian religions, which have made an immeasurable contribution to the creation of all Russian history and the Russian state. These religions today include Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and Buddhism. But if we take a closer look at this undeniable, scientifically proven opinion about traditional Russian religions, it turns out that Christianity was brought to Russian lands from the Byzantine Empire, Islam from Arabia Saudi, Judaism from Israel, and Buddhism from China. It turns out that the Russian people had nothing of their own, no history, no faith, no culture. Everything was borrowed. So what did the Russian people originally have? What did they believe in, or who did they believe in, before the emergence of traditional Russian religions? Official historical science answers this question unequivocally. The Russian people were pagans and practiced paganism, a barbaric cult of ignorant semi-wild people. Note: pagans, Old Slavic, foreigners, outsiders, aliens, representatives of a foreign people with foreign beliefs, traditions and culture. Old Slavic Dictionary. Moscow, 1894. Or hostile tribes to the Slavs, who spoke different languages and believed in different gods. Russian Vedas. Appendix. Moscow, 1992, page 287. Or this word refers to all people who have not been exposed to the gospel message of salvation and have not accepted Christianity. 1992, page 207. Or this word refers to all people who have not been exposed to the gospel message of salvation and have not accepted Christianity. Biblical Encyclopedia of Archimandrite. Nikifor, Moscow, 1891. But if you ask about the beliefs of other peoples before traditional world religions, the answer is paganism. It seems all peoples practiced paganism before these religions. They were considered ignorant barbarians. One can't help but get the impression that everyone, without exception, on earth, before the emergence of traditional world religions, professed only one religion: paganism. People worshipped the same gods and the same forces of nature, and as a result they were all ignorant barbarians. And did they really have no history? Or did each nation on earth create its own history, culture and tradition? Ancient folk faiths with unique foundations and names existed. Midgard's history is deeply tied to Earth's beliefs, traditions and cultures. Thus, history should not be viewed separately from faith, traditions or other cultures. Original faiths, not just paganism, should be studied as integral to people's history and culture, not as isolated myths. Therefore, one should never consider the history of any people separately from its faith, traditions, culture, or from the point of view of the beliefs, traditions and cultures of other peoples. The original faith of any people should not be seen as isolated or mythical, but connected to their history, culture, and tradition. Human history shows most peoples, except Israel, start with a sacred legend or myth led by a hero. Russian history is often viewed from when the great Russian state was a vast social system, with a strong people across Eurasia. According to the modern view of human history, which spans about 5,000 to 6,000 years, from ancient Egypt to the present day, almost all peoples of the world, except for the people of Israel, begin their history with some sacred legend, a unique epic or myth, led by a great hero, the progenitor who gave the people their name. For some reason, our Russian history is often viewed starting from the time when the great Russian state represented a vast social system, a strong people who populated enormous territories of Eurasia. But for some reason today it is customary to divide the great Russian state, rich in trade, crafts and industry, into two large independent states, Kievan Rus and Novgorod Rus, as well as several small Russian principalities. Few know the original names of great Russian principalities, part of the vast Slavo-Aryan state, Rossini, spanning Europe and Asia. Nowadays, few people know the original names of other great Russian principalities and their inclusion in the vast Slavo-Aryan state, Rossini. Foreign interference in the 8th to 10th centuries led to the division of the great Russian state into independent, sometimes rival principalities involving Volga Bulgaria, the Khazar Khaganate, and the Byzantine and Roman empires. At the same time, this is completely ignored. The division of the great Russian state into independent, and sometimes even rival principalities, began as a result of foreign interference in the internal affairs of Russian lands in the 8th to 10th centuries, from Volga Bulgaria and the Khazar Khaganate to the Byzantine and Roman empires. The supreme authorities of these states used various methods to incite strife and hostility among the great Russian princes, ranging from flattery, deception, forgery, slander and bribery to armed raids on Slavic towns and villages. And when these methods did not succeed due to the worthy resistance from the Slavic armies, the great Russian princes and their retinues were forced to accept new religions that were foreign to the Slavic Aryans, such as Judaism and Byzantine Christianity, Aryanism and Roman Catholicism, Assyrian Zoroastrianism, Arab Islam, and Chinese Buddhism. Notes on the small Russian principalities. They were considered small in comparison to other Russian principalities, but even the smallest Russian principality occupied a territory much larger than any modern European state. Rossinia is the territory where the great race, that is the white peoples, settled. Later, the word Rossinia transitioned into Latin, and it began to be translated simply as Rus. In ancient times, the territory of Rossinia was washed by the waters of 4 oceans: the cold Arctic, the Eastern Pacific, the Western Atlantic, and the Indian Ocean. The Slavic Aryans have always been a tolerant people. They knew about Christ and Jehovah, about Mithras and Osiris, about Allah and Shiva, about Gautama Buddha, and about the creator of the new fire worship ritual, Zoroaster, and were calm towards these and other religious movements. In those ancient times, temples of various religions had already stood for centuries in the cities of the great Russian lands, where foreign merchants arriving for festivities performed their religious and cult rituals. It was these temples that later became centers for the destruction of the Slavic and Aryan old faith, history, culture, and tradition. It is important to clarify right away that the persecution of those who practiced the old faith and its priestly ministers was not carried out by true followers of any particular religious teaching, who understood the deep, hidden meaning of God's word, but by those newly emerged adepts who used various religious teachings for their own selfish purposes, and by newly converted followers who did not know the true spiritual essence of the teachings. As a rule, first of the newly emerged adepts used the second group to achieve their selfish goals. They were incited against the followers of ancient beliefs and demanded that they destroy them, claiming that they were supposedly enemies of the true faith. But their attitude towards those who carried out their plans was summed up in the phrase, "If you make an uneducated person pray to God, he'll just end up banging his head against the wall." This conclusion is based on facts, not fiction, obscured by some Western historians. It derives from natural laws of kingdoms' rise and fall and a critical analysis of ancient accounts. The foundational facts of Russian history have long been buried and unexamined, by which kingdoms and nations are formed, rise and fall, and on a strict critical analysis of ancient legends. The facts that served as the basis for the creation of ancient Russian history lay for a long time under wraps, unanalyzed, unexamined, and not passed through the crucible of sound and impartial criticism. Meanwhile, the history of the ancient peoples, the Slavs and Aryans, is so rich in facts that their traces can be found everywhere, woven into the lives of all the nations of Europe and Asia. When examined closely, the great Russian state itself emerges as the greatest in the world. Some German and Arab historians have diligently engaged with Russian history, but their lack of knowledge of all the main Slavic and Aryan dialects, as well as their limited familiarity with the character, customs, daily life, and beliefs of these peoples, complicated this task. Let's not say too much about those who made it their duty to belittle and tarnish everything related to the history of the Slavs. Aryans, such specialists still exist today. They have attempted in the past and are currently trying to take away from the Slavic Aryans not only their history, glory, greatness, power, wealth, industry, and trade, but also all the good qualities of their soul and heart. They even seek to eradicate their old faith, ancient tradition, and unique culture. One of the ways these specialists have chosen is to impose plausible lies. For example, the myth that the old faith of the Slavic and Aryan peoples supposedly disappeared over 1,000 years ago during the Christianization of Rus, and that in the modern world there are no traces of the ancient faith and no followers of it left. This is a lie that has been imposed on people for a long time, as if there was no period of dual faith in Rus, which was destroyed by Patriarch Nikon and Tsar Alexei Mikhailovich Romanov in the 17th century, when representatives of the pre-Christian Old Faith, Orthodox Old Believers, and righteous Christians coexisted peacefully on Russian lands. And indeed, the period of dual faith is well described in the works of academician Rybakov. Moreover, the date of the forced baptism of the people in Kiev in 988 is automatically considered the date of the baptism of all Russian cities and settlements. It's worth pondering how the Russian people could have accepted Christianity 1,000 years ago in an 850-year-old Moscow, a 400-year-old Tyumen, or a 60-year-old Magadan, or a 400-year-old Tyumen or a 60-year-old Magadan. Patriarch Nikon, in his church reform in the 17th century, not only replaced the two-finger sign with the three-finger sign and directed the processions around the churches to face the sun, but he also did everything to erase from the memory of the people living in Muscovy the existence of the pre-Christian Orthodox Old Faith. For the representatives of Byzantine Orthodox Christianity, the greatness, wisdom, and glory of pre-Christian orthodoxy were the main obstacles to spreading the new teachings among the common people. They did not understand the culture and traditions and considered them to be wild. For example, back in the 9th century, the Byzantine missionary Belisarius, who visited Rus, wrote, "The Orthodox Slavs, the Gerusians, are wild people, and their life is wild and godless. Men and women, naked together, lock themselves in a hot, stifling hut and torture their bodies, whipping themselves with wooden rods mercilessly until exhaustion and risking jumping into a hole in the ice or a snowdrift. After cooling off, they would go back into the hut to continue torturing their bodies." How could a Greek Byzantine understand what a Russian bathhouse is? For him, this ancient ritual was a manifestation of savagery. How could a Greek Byzantine understand a Russian bathhouse? It was seen as pagan. For him, this ancient rite was an expression of savagery. Isn't it because, during the time of forced Christianization, they destroyed the bathhouse, seeing it as a place of paganism and devilry? In order to separate people from everything native, to replace words and origins, by decree of Nikon in Christian liturgical books, the phrase Orthodox Christian faith was replaced with Orthodox Christian faith, which entailed attributing to Christianity the achievements of greatness, wisdom, and glory of pre-Christian orthodoxy. However, we will not allow them to appropriate our heritage and boast of foreign power, glory, might, and knowledge. We will take away from them, with arguments, those facts that they have so violently attached to the history of other nations, robbing the history of the Slavs and Aryans. Many people only recognize the commonly accepted facts and documents that they are able to study themselves. For them, one can quote the preamble to the Federal Law on Freedom of Conscience and Religious Associations No. 125 FZ, which came into effect on October 1st, 1997. The Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation, recognizing the special role of orthodoxy in the history of Russia, in the formation and development of its spirituality and culture, and respecting Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, and other religions that are an integral part of the historical heritage of the peoples of Russia, adopts this federal law. As can be seen from the provided excerpt, orthodoxy and Christianity do not mean the same thing, even in the preamble to the federal law of Russia. Any free interpretations of the law are unacceptable. What's written with a pen can't be erased with an axe. Note: Orthodox Christianity, that is to say, unchanging original. Orthodoxy, the steadfast adherence to the foundations of any teaching or worldview. In religion, orthodoxy refers to the steadfast adherence to the traditional teachings of the Church. The Modern Dictionary of Foreign Words, 1993. We know that history should not be a panegyric, but we won't allow the enemies of Russia to turn the great history of the Slavs and Aryans into satire and a subject of mockery. Indeed, the Slavs and Aryans, as a united people, educated before the Romans and Greeks, left behind numerous monuments in all parts of the Old World, testifying to their presence there and to their ancient writing, arts, enlightenment, and old faith. Historical monuments will forever remain indisputable evidence. They tell us about the actions of our great ancestors in our native language, which is the prototype of all Slavic and Aryan languages, dialects and dialects, merging in it as in their common source. Of course, such work moves forward slowly. Let us also go slowly, without haste, but with a sure step, and wish to complete our journey in honor and glory of our ancient gods and wise ancestors. I would like to pay my respects to the memory of the wise man, Elder Vladimir, from the Dolina clan community, who dedicated his life to preserving the old faith of our ancestors and has departed with the smoke to his kin in the pure Svarga, to the heavenly family. Father Vladimir, the elder, was part of the circle of priests of Belovodya, the author of church works on the ancient faith of our forebears and ancient Slavic history. In the world, he was Nikolai Ivanovich Ivanov. The years of life, 7435-7507. According to the modern calendar, 1927, 1999, 7507. According to the modern calendar, 1927, 1999, and the year in the modern sense. This enlightening book is the fruit of the life's work of Father Vladimir, who sought to convey the ancient wisdom and pure truth about the old faith of our ancestors, yngliism, in the most accessible form to the hearts of ordinary people, who strive to return to their ancient roots, to their ancient culture, old faith, and majestic, beautiful tradition. It must be stated right away that yngliism, the ancient faith of our forebears, does not carry anything anti-Christian, anti-Semitic, or anti-Islamic in its original essence, as some experts on pre-Christian faith and the culture of the Slavs and Aryans like to claim. For yngliism existed long before the emergence of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and other religious teachings. The original roots of yngliism must be sought in the depths of antiquity, in the blessed and legendary land of Daria, Arctic, Hyperborea, Siberia. For yngliism existed long before the emergence of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and other religious teachings. The original roots of yngliism must be sought in the depths of antiquity, in the blessed and legendary land of Daria, Arctic, Hyperborea, Siberia, which was located on the sunken northern continent. Orthodox Old Believer Ynglians have always been, are, and will be tolerant people who respect everyone's right to practice any religion or faith and to worship the God who is closest and dearest to their spirit and conscience. But the tolerance of Orthodox Old Believer Ynglians does not mean that they will allow anyone who is too lazy to distort their old faith or make a mockery of the ancient beliefs of our ancestors to slander it. In addition, readers should pay attention to the use of old words and phrases in this book. Many old words are used with the prefixes without and raz instead of the currently used without and raz. This is related to the figurative meanings of old words, such as without death and without death. The figurative meaning of the first word means the spirit of the demon of death. And the figurative meaning of the second one means eternity, or the words raskas and raskas. The figurative meaning of the first word means that the information was told only once, and the figurative meaning of the second word means that the pure truth was told without distortion or additions. The word idol in the text is used in its old spelling, as it consists of two runic words, kam, relative, and mir, universe, meaning that an idol is a symbol of a relative living in the universe. Father Alexander Asgard, year 7508. 15 each. About the book, since time immemorial, ancient knowledge about the old faith has been passed down from generation to generation, from family to family, and each Slavic or Aryan clan kept its own piece of ancient wisdom. The holistic original knowledge of Ingliism, the ancient faith of the first ancestors, was preserved by wise priest-keepers who, using various types of writing, recorded ancient wisdom on stones, tablets, plates and items made of various metals, parchment, etc. Sacred texts were written in trajes, runes, bukvica, glagolitic, and other generic priestly scripts. These forms of writing did not disappear into the darkness of time, as some readers might think. About runes and their varieties, Sanskrit, Velesovica, strokes and cuts, the large and small futark, and more. Many books have been written that present ancient runic texts recorded in one form of runes or another. Glagolitic and various shortened versions of Bukvica, Old Slavic Cyrillic, Byzantine Uncial, Church Slavonic alphabet, and the ancient Russian alphabet are studied in philological departments at various universities, not only in Russia, but also in foreign countries. Many might ask, why do we need to dig up the long-forgotten old, the outdated, that has vanished into the darkness of the ages? There is the new, the unknown, which is necessary for modern life and technological progress. But, as everyone knows, the new is just well-forgotten old. The information that has been preserved in ancient chronicle texts contains enormous knowledge about the multifaceted life of our great ancestors. It is time for us, descendants of sacred lineages, to learn about the old faith of our ancestors, yngliizm, and touch upon the true knowledge of our ancient and rich history, traditions, and unique culture. Our task is simple yet complex, to remember the forgotten, so we do not become like Ivans, who forget their kin. Without knowing our great past, we will never have a bright future. The Orthodox Old Believers Inglings, with their ancient faith, culture, and tradition, will always be closer in spirit to the simple Russian person than foreign missionaries with their universal values, whom the simple Russian person has never understood. Because without truly and indeed knowing our remarkable past, we will never have our bright future. Orthodox Old Believers Inglings, with their ancient faith, culture, and traditions, will always be closer in spirit to the simple Russian person than any foreign missionaries with their universal values, whom the simple Russian person has never seen or understood. A publication describing general but more complete information about the old faith was previously unavailable to most readers. For scientific study, there were only a few instances of brief information about Ingliism, such as the Radziwill Chronicle, which contains only a mention of the Inglians, that is, the Old Believers Inglings, on the reverse side of the 8th leaf. These are mainly rare works by the clergy of the ancient Russian Inglistic Church of the Orthodox Old Believers Inglings. Kapen Vedomir, Folko Vseslav, Father Dobroslav, Kapen Jaromir, Vedun Stanislav, Kapen Alexander, Father Lyubomir, Paterdia Miroslav, Elders of the Valley of the Ancestral Community of Father Vladimir, Paterdia Sviatoslav, Kapen Yngling Alexander. This publication is based on the work of Father Vladimir, but it also includes small topics from the works of the aforementioned priests and clergy. In addition, to provide a more vivid perception of information about the ancient gods, this book includes reproductions of paintings by wonderful artists depicting ancient gods and goddesses, whom the Old Believers honor. In the second part of the book, we continue with the Word of Wisdom, by Volkoveli Muder. We hope, dear readers of this book, that you will find answers to the questions that interest you in life. I want to wish everyone knowledge, love, goodness, joy, and great wisdom. Let's remember the forgotten. Surikov Oleg Yuryevich, candidate of Historical Sciences.